Stress shows itself in moments both expected and sudden. It comes when the day is already too full, and one more demand arrives. It comes when silence is broken by sharp words that cut deeper than they should. It comes when the paycheck does not stretch to meet the month. Stress appears when schedules collapse, when plans fail, when people disappoint. It waits in the ordinary, striking hardest when the ground already feels unsteady. Situations are countless. A driver sits in traffic while the clock pushes toward a meeting that cannot be missed. A mother juggles work and home only to hear complaints from both sides. A young professional opens a message marked urgent just before midnight, knowing sleep will not come easily after. A student studies through the night, chasing grades that seem always out of reach. A caretaker balances medicine, bills, and exhaustion until the body trembles under the load. Stress is not rare. It is the background of modern life, shaping the tone of mornings, afternoons, and nights without asking permission. Even vacations, meant for rest, are haunted by notifications and unfinished tasks that follow like shadows. The supposed escape becomes another arena for stress to find us. The signs are familiar. The heart quickens, the chest feels tight, breathing grows shallow. The jaw locks, the shoulders rise, the stomach knots. Hands shake at small provocations. The mind races, replaying insults, rehearsing arguments, building fears that do not end. Sleep is stolen, meals are rushed, voices rise. Some grow silent, others explode. But in each case, the body reveals what words tried to hide. Stress has taken hold. Even health begins to bend under its weight, as headaches grow frequent and rest feels impossible. Concentration fades, joy shrinks. A single careless word can feel like a blow, not because of its weight, but because the body is already raw. Over time, stress engraves itself into posture, tone, and even the way one walks into a room. Under its weight, reactions sharpen. Patience shortens, judgment blurs. A parent hears a child's mistake and erupts louder than the mistake deserves. A worker, cornered by deadlines, lashes out at a colleague who asks a simple question. A friend, already tired, interprets silence as rejection and begins a fight that never needed to start. These are not isolated explosions. They are symptoms of pressure long carried. Stress builds like water behind a dam, and eventually it spills. And when it does, it rarely follows reason. It breaks where the wall is weakest. It might break in traffic, at the dinner table, or in the middle of a conversation that had nothing to do with the true source of the weight. Sometimes the release is small, a sigh, a slammed door, a bitter remark, but sometimes it is large enough to wound relationships beyond repair. The problem feels inescapable. Everyone knows the moments when stress turns ordinary life into something heavier, harsher, harder to endure. Everyone feels the edge where the next word or action might be regretted, and everyone has asked themselves, if only in silence, why must it always be this way? The sense of being trapped is part of stress itself, caught between demands you cannot control and reactions you cannot always stop. The body begs for relief, yet the cycle repeats day after day, leaving people to wonder if life is nothing more than pressure without pause. The weight of stress presses universally, but the response to it is not fixed. That is where philosophy enters, not as abstract theory, but as a guide to the most personal battles. Among the voices of the past, one stands out for the clarity of his struggle: Marcus Aurelius. He lived surrounded by stress greater than most could imagine, yet he refused to let it master him. His words remain not as distant reflections, but as living reminders that even under crushing pressure, choice is possible. So the question rises naturally: when stress strikes, when situations push us to the edge, when the body shakes and the mind blurs, what would Marcus Aurelius do? Anger under stress never comes from nowhere. It feels sudden, like fire catching in dry grass, but the ground has been prepared long before the spark. To see clearly, we must trace how stress begins, how it grows, and how it opens the door for anger to walk in. Stress often starts with the external load, the sheer weight of life pressing from every side. Work deadlines, bills, obligations at home, health concerns, the constant pull of technology. These are pressures that demand attention whether we are ready or not. They are not moral failures, they are conditions of existence. Yet when they exceed capacity, they create strain that the body and mind cannot easily ignore. Once the load arrives, the mind adds its own distortions. It interprets events too quickly, often assigning meaning that inflates the pressure. A simple delay becomes injustice. A careless remark turns into humiliation. A setback at work feels permanent, as if one bad day defines an entire career. Stress itself is neutral, but interpretation twists it into something larger, sharper, and more personal. Ego deepens the cut. When identity fuses with circumstances, every inconvenience feels like an attack on worth. The late report is not just about time, it is evidence of incompetence. A partner's sharp words are not mere sound, they are proof of rejection. Stress becomes unbearable when the self allows every external disruption to pierce its core. Marcus Aurelius warned himself never to let the ruling faculty be invaded by what belongs to another. Yet ego constantly invites stress to define who we are. Habit adds its own weight. Many grow up believing that anger is strength, that raising the voice or clenching the fist is the way to push back against pressure. Under stress, the body executes this script before reason has a chance to intervene. The jaw tightens, the voice sharpens, the hand clenches. It feels automatic, but it is only conditioning. What has been learned can also be unlearned. Without awareness, however, habit makes anger feel like destiny. Then there is the illusion of control. Stress escalates most when energy is wasted on what cannot be changed: traffic, markets, other people's choices. The harder we push against what lies outside our grasp, the more powerless we feel. Anger seduces us here, whispering that an outburst restores command. In reality, it only confirms the loss of control. The storm outside remains, and now the storm inside rages too. All these forces, external load, distorted meaning, ego wounds, conditioned reflexes, false control, intertwine to build stress into a state of readiness. It is pressure without release, waiting for a spark. And when the spark comes, it is anger that answers. The driver cuts in, the partner mishears a tone, the colleague asks a question at the wrong moment. Stress transforms into anger because the groundwork was laid long before. Pressure becomes fire, and the mind believes for a brief instant that it has regained control, even as it loses it. Marcus Aurelius recognized this chain. He faced stress on a scale that dwarfs our daily concerns: wars, plagues, political intrigue, and yet his private notes return again and again to the same reminder. Events belong to fortune, but judgment belongs to you. Stress is the weight of life. Anger is the surrender of reason. To confuse the two is to be conquered twice, first by circumstance and then by the self. So the analysis leads here. Anger under stress is not mysterious. It grows from roots we can name, from causes we can observe. And because they can be observed, they can be cut. The next step is clear. If these are the roots, what remedies can sever them, so that stress remains pressure but never hardens into rage? Marcus's method began with stress itself. He did not pretend it was absent. He acknowledged its arrival, then stripped it to its bare form. In the face of pressure, his first task was to identify what exactly had happened, without adding story. Stress was never to be dismissed as trivial, but neither was it to be magnified. His calm came from precision. Consider the inbox with a harsh message. Stress enters when the words appear urgent, even hostile. Marcus would pause. This is only text, only marks on a surface. It contains information, not injury. He confronts stress by separating signal from reaction. His solution to stress is clarity. Read, understand, and decide whether action is needed. He does not allow the mere presence of pressure to dictate turmoil. If the message requires response, he replies with brevity. If it is only noise, he leaves it unanswered. In both cases, stress is handled without letting it swell into agitation. At the family table, stress rises when voices clash. The instinct is discomfort, the weight of conflict pressing in. Marcus would analyze, here are people acting from their beliefs. Their raised voices are evidence of agitation, not evidence of truth. His solution to stress is patience. He acknowledges the noise, but he does not let it become more than what it is. If the argument touches him directly, he chooses to answer with facts, not heat. If it does not concern him, he remains still, knowing not every quarrel deserves his energy. In the traffic jam, stress tempts with frustration as time drains away. Marcus would note, the fact is simple, movement has stopped. The stress comes not from the cars, but from the thought that delay is loss. His solution to stress is reduction. Call the event by its true name, neither more nor less. He waits, reminding himself that impatience does not shorten distance. The test of the road is endurance, not rage. Once stress is confronted, the second layer appears, the danger of anger. Here, Marcus sharpened his guard even more, for he knew stress is heavy, but anger is fire. Stress may tighten the chest, but anger seizes the mind. His vigilance was constant at this threshold. In the case of the inbox, anger waits in the impulse to type a sharp reply. Marcus would counter, do these words alter my reason? No, to react with anger is to hand control to another. He solves the danger by restraint, answering only what is necessary or choosing silence when silence protects calm. By doing so, the chain of escalation is cut before it begins. At the family table, anger whispers, fight back, prove strength with louder words. Marcus would resist. If they are wrong, it is ignorance. If right, I can learn. My worth does not depend on noise. He prevents anger by refusing to mere agitation. His solution is measured tone or quiet presence, never escalation. If correction is needed, he waits until the heat has passed, knowing timing is as important as truth. In the traffic jam, anger knocks in the form of horn blasting and clenched fists. Marcus would remind, the cars block the road, not my judgment. To rage is to multiply the harm. He solves the anger by holding to patience, enduring delay without surrendering his freedom of mind. He accepts that time has been lost, but refuses to lose himself along with it. Thus, the structure is always twofold. First, address the stress by naming the fact, stripping it of exaggeration and accepting what lies outside control. Second, block the transformation of stress into anger by refusing assent to the first impulse, choosing action guided by reason. Each situation offers him a chance to practice this separation, and in each case, the storm stops before it takes root within. For Marcus, these steps were not abstract ideals, but concrete methods. He dissected stress into its plain elements, then guarded against the leap into rage. Stress remained pressure, but never progressed into mastery over him. His judgment remained sovereign, and his freedom intact. Marcus's resistance to anger begins with the way he handles stress. Stress is the first pressure point. An email with harsh wording, a deadline that closes in, a family argument that grows too loud, or traffic that traps the car. In each case, the sensation is tension, but the Stoic asks, what has actually happened? A message has been received. A time limit approaches. People are speaking in raised voices. Cars are not moving, nothing more. By stripping the event to its fact, Marcus prevents stress from inflating into something larger. The key Stoic principle here is control of judgment. Events are impressions, harm is an interpretation. If the impression is met without judgment, stress remains pressure, not wound. Marcus trains himself to pause before assent. He does not say, I am insulted, but words have been spoken. He does not say, I am trapped, but traffic is delayed. This reduction is not denial, it is accuracy. Alongside this is the dichotomy of control. Much of stress comes from wishing to control what will not yield. Other people's choices, the passing of time, or the outcomes of effort. Marcus narrows focus, perception, choice, action. By placing attention only on what is his to govern, he prevents stress from breeding resentment. When the inbox is full, he decides what to answer first. When arguments break out, he decides whether to add clarity or to stay silent. When traffic stops, he decides how to use the time in thought. Stress still presses, but it does not dictate his state. Yet Marcus knew stress itself is not the worst danger. The greater enemy is anger. Stress is external pressure. Anger is the internal breakdown that follows if judgment fails. Here, Stoic analysis becomes sharper. Anger, to Marcus, is not a feeling, but a judgment that harm has been done and that retaliation is justified. Both claims must be tested. First, is harm real? Most insults, delays, or criticisms touch opinion, not virtue. If someone calls him incompetent, the words are air. His competence is unchanged. If traffic slows him, time is lost, but integrity remains. Harm to virtue is the only true harm. By holding this line, Marcus finds most anger collapses because the premise of harm is false. Second, is retaliation good? Stoicism holds that only virtue is good, only vice is bad. To retaliate in rage is to damage reason, the very thing that defines humanity. Therefore, retribution driven by anger cannot be good. Correction may be required, an answer, a boundary, a consequence, but it must be delivered without hatred. Marcus separates justice from revenge. Anger also pretends to usefulness. Many claim it motivates, sharpens, or empowers. Marcus tests this. Does anger clarify perception? No, it distorts. Does it improve judgment? No, it clouds. Does it strengthen action? No, it rushes and overreaches. What remains is noise mistaken for energy. The Stoic alternative is resolve without rage, clear speech, firm boundaries, consistent decisions, unclouded by hostility. He applies this logic to everyday provocations. A critical email demands restraint. He answers the substance, not the tone. A loud quarrel at home demands proportion. He recognizes agitation as ignorance, not attack, and declines to mirror it. A traffic jam demands perspective. Horns and fists do not move cars. So patience is the only rational choice. Online hostility demands discipline. Insults reveal the speaker's mind, not his worth. So he leaves them unanswered, or responds with clarity stripped of heat. Time is another tool. Marcus reminds himself that every insult, every inconvenience, every quarrel will pass. The comment thread will be forgotten tomorrow, the argument will fade, the traffic will clear. To rage is to act as though the moment were eternal. By recalling impermanence, he shrinks anger before it grows. Finally, he ties the entire practice to duty. In each role, professional, parent, partner, citizen, the requirement is to act in line with reason. Anger interferes with reason, therefore it interferes with duty. A manager who shouts cannot lead clearly. A parent who rages cannot guide well. A partner who lashes out cannot build trust. For Marcus, calm is not indulgence, it is obligation. The sequence is consistent. Stress is handled by stripping events to facts, focusing on what is controllable, and refusing unnecessary judgment. Anger is handled by dismantling its premises. Harm is rarely real, retaliation is never good, and usefulness is an illusion. What remains is a calm that is not passivity but deliberate Stoic clarity. From Marcus, several lessons stand clear. They are not theories but working practices to confront stress and prevent it from becoming anger. The first lesson is to separate fact from story. Stress begins with fact. Anger begins with the story added to it. A deadline exists, that is fact. The thought, this pressure will break me, is story. A colleague criticizes a plan, that is fact. The thought, they want me to fail, is story. Marcus reminds himself to stop at the fact. By removing the story, stress remains as weight but does not escalate. The second lesson is to guard the gate of assent. Impressions arrive without warning, but assent belongs to reason. The harsh word lands and the impulse to strike back rises quickly. Marcus inserts the pause, not yet. He lets the first wave pass before judgment enters. Without assent, stress stays external. Anger requires consent and he withholds it. The third lesson is to practice compassion. Harshness from others reflects their state, not his worth. A short reply may hide their own stress. A raised voice may reflect their fear. By interpreting error as ignorance, Marcus refuses to mirror agitation. Stress still comes, but anger is cut off. The fourth lesson is to align with reason. Anger clouds reason. Reason clears stress. Marcus frames every act with the question, what does reason require here? Sometimes the answer is silence, sometimes correction, sometimes endurance. Stress offers the test. Reason provides the measure. The fifth lesson is to accept impermanence. Stressful events are temporary. The message will be forgotten. The argument will end. The delay will resolve. To become angry is to act as if the disturbance were permanent. Marcus counters this illusion by recalling that all things pass. Beyond these, Stoicism gives further guidance on stress. One is to use stress as material for practice. Marcus calls difficulties the training ground of virtue. A late train is a chance to practice patience. A hostile remark is a chance to practice self-control. A sudden demand at work is a chance to practice focus. Stress is redefined as exercise. Another lesson is to divide stress into parts. Instead of facing it as a heavy block, he breaks it down. A long project is handled task by task. A family problem is faced conversation by conversation. By reduction, the load becomes bearable. There is also the lesson of perspective. From the view from above, Marcus imagines events in their wider setting. The sharp word is one moment in a lifetime. The delay is a passing inconvenience in the span of years. By enlarging perspective, the stress shrinks. Finally, he reminds himself of the body's role. Stress often shows in tension, shallow breath, or fatigue. By noticing these signs, he brings reason back into play. A pause, a breath, a moment of awareness interrupts the cycle. The body's signal is acknowledged, but not allowed to dictate the mind. These lessons together form a system. Stress is met first with clarity, fact without story, then with discipline, pause before assent, then with proportion, each event measured against time and scale, then with practice, each difficulty used as training, and always with reason, the ruler of action. Marcus did not expect stress to vanish. He expected himself to face it with steadiness. He did not expect anger never to rise as impulse. He expected himself never to grant it rule. The mind may be struck by impressions, but assent decides whether they take root. This is the Stoic line of defense, repeated until it becomes habit. What emerges is not detachment, but mastery. Stress continues as part of life, but it no longer dictates anger. Each lesson functions as a tool. Applied together, they preserve judgment and keep the ruling faculty intact. In this way, Marcus meets pressure without surrender and turns every disturbance into ground for reason. Our age is more crowded with stress than almost any period before. Messages arrive faster than they can be answered, work expands beyond office hours, family life mixes with digital distraction, and social media invites constant comparison and judgment. Stress is no longer an exception, it is the baseline. In this environment, anger often appears as the quick release valve. But the Stoic view reminds us that stress itself is not harm. It is pressure. And pressure only becomes damage if we add the wrong judgment. The first practical effect of Stoicism is clarity. By training to separate fact from story, the mind sees what is happening without distortion. A delay is a delay. It is not proof that life is unfair. A harsh comment is a comment. It is not proof of personal failure. This shift reduces unnecessary stress immediately. It does not remove the event, but it prevents the exaggeration that usually makes stress unbearable. The second effect is control over reaction. Stress pushes the body, heart rate rises, tension builds, thoughts rush. Normally, anger follows quickly. The Stoic pause creates space between impulse and action. In that pause, judgment is tested. Is this within my control? Is retaliation useful? Is this worth the cost of peace? Most anger dissolves under such questions. The gain is self-command, not silence for its own sake, but deliberate action instead of reflex. The third effect is stability in relationships. In workplaces, stress is constant and anger damages cooperation. A Stoic response, fact over story, pause before assent, keeps collaboration intact. In families, stress emerges daily, but anger under stress cuts trust more than the original problem. Stoic patience preserves bonds. Online, where cycles of hostility multiply, the refusal to answer insult with insult breaks the chain. The immediate benefit is fewer conflicts. The deeper benefit is trust, respect, and credibility. The fourth effect is resilience. Stress often feels permanent, but Stoicism insists on impermanence. Every meeting ends, every quarrel passes, every post disappears in the flow of time. Remembering this reduces the emotional weight of the present moment. Problems still require solutions, but panic and rage are avoided. The practical outcome is endurance, the ability to work through pressure without collapse. The fifth effect is alignment with reason. Anger clouds reason, and reason is the only faculty that allows us to solve problems effectively. By discarding anger, Marcus kept his judgment clear, even under extreme pressure. Applied today, this means decisions at work are sharper, discussions in families more balanced, and responses online less destructive. The advantage is not abstract. It shows up in better choices, fewer regrets, and stronger outcomes. The sixth effect is the transformation of stress into practice. Instead of treating stress as a curse, Stoicism treats it as a training ground. Each delay is a chance to practice patience. Each criticism is a chance to practice humility. Each disruption is a chance to practice endurance. This reframing converts unavoidable stress into usable material for growth. The direct benefit is psychological. Frustration turns into exercise, anger into discipline. Together, these effects demonstrate why Stoicism matters today. It does not promise a life free of pressure. It promises a mind free of slavery to anger. Freedom, in this view, is not bending the world, but mastering oneself. The digital age multiplies stress, but Stoicism gives the tools to meet it without collapse. Marcus Aurelius provides the model. He guarded his mind against false judgments, refused to give assent to impulse, acted in line with reason, and accepted impermanence. For us, the same path is open. Guard the mind, act with reason, refuse slavery to anger. Stress will remain, but it will not rule. This is not resignation, it is strength. It is not weakness, it is mastery of the ruling faculty. In a world that rewards outrage, the calm mind is not only rare, but effective. The Stoic discipline turns stress into clarity, anger into calm, and life into steady practice. So why did Marcus Aurelius never let anger consume him under stress? Because he saw the truth. Stress is external, anger is internal. To confuse the two is to surrender freedom. To separate them is to live free. Stress came from insults, delays, failures, things that arrive from outside. Anger arose only when the mind gave assent, when it declared, "This is an attack, this is unbearable, or this must be punished." Marcus trained himself to block this step. He faced the same interruptions and frustrations we face, but he refused to add the judgment that made them poison. When insulted, he reminded himself, "These are only words, shaped by another's understanding. They cannot wound unless I let them." When delayed, he reminded himself, "The schedule is external, but my patience is mine." When facing failure, he reminded himself, "Outcomes are not mine to command, but my effort is." Each reminder stripped stress of its power to ignite anger. This is the heart of Stoicism. Guard judgment. Do not hand control of your mind to events you do not command. Marcus called this the ruling faculty, and to keep it intact was his greatest task. The world could shake, but the mind could remain steady if it chose not to assent to false impressions. Another shield was the memory of impermanence. Every insult, every failure, every quarrel dissolves in time. The loudest anger fades into silence. The sharpest stress becomes memory. To rage over what will soon vanish is to chain yourself to smoke. Marcus returned to this thought often. Soon you will be gone, and so will they. Why give away reason to what does not last? And always he turned back to reason. Reason asks, what is the fact here? What is within my control? What is the most fitting action for a rational being? Anger never survives these questions. It clouds perception, rushes judgment, and destroys proportion. Reason restores them. For Marcus, calm was not softness, it was fidelity to reason. The lesson for us is enduring. You cannot control the storm, but you can control your sail. You cannot silence the world, but you can choose your response. In every workplace, every family, every online exchange, the temptation to anger is constant. But the Stoic response remains: wait, test the impression. Act only by reason. Anger is quick, but wisdom is steady. Anger is loud, but wisdom is strong. To follow anger is to let impulse rule. To follow reason is to remain human. The practice of Stoicism is the bridge between the two. For today's world, this is not optional. It is essential. Families need it, because trust breaks quickly when anger rules. Workplaces need it, because cooperation dies under stress when people lash out. Society needs it, because outrage multiplies outrage until no one listens. And within your own mind, the need is greatest, because nothing enslaves faster than anger left unchallenged. If you choose this path, you will not erase stress. The inbox will still overflow, the traffic will still jam, the arguments will still come. But you will erase anger's control over you. You will meet the same pressures without surrendering your judgment. And that is freedom. This is the value of Stoicism. This is the gift of Marcus Aurelius. The calm mind is not detached from life. It is prepared for it. The disciplined mind does not flee from stress. It transforms it. And the free mind does not bow to anger. It governs itself. If you found meaning in this, join us at Sophoria. Subscribe, share, and reflect with us. Together, let us keep exploring how ancient wisdom meets modern struggle, and how you can master your mind in a world of noise.